Hi, Nikhil.
Hi.
It's I'm really excited about this series, and I am really glad that I'm starting with friends of mine and with a subject that I so dearly love, fashion. So, since we don't have much time, I'm going to get started right away. And not to make you guys seem old, but you have had a ringside seat when it comes to fashion in at least in this country, worldwide, I would say. And I'm very curious to know from your perspective, and this goes to all three of you, that at least in the last decade, right? And you also come from different perspectives because, of course, Shantanu Nikhil, you've been in the business and you've been observing the business, Supriya, and commenting on the business as part of editorial. How do you feel that the Indian fashion consumer has changed, both qualitatively and quantitatively? By which I mean, if I was a consumer 10 years ago, how might my my risk appetite or the kind of what I prefer, my preferences may have changed in the last 10 years, and how has the market expanded to maybe get new kinds of customers? So perhaps I'll start with you, Supriya, and then move on to you guys.
Well, thank you so much for having me here. It's been fun just talking to you about this earlier. And I think we all live in this hyper, kinetic world where, time, space, intent, all of them come together in an instant. And I think the way we shop and the drive with which we do so has changed. I think there's some sort of a retail renaissance that's happening over here as well. And I feel that the consumer window is that 15-second, whether you share, repost, and, send it to your friend, whatever it is. It's even lesser. I think we all snap out of it in the first 3 seconds. And I think that we are dealing with customers, consumers who know what they want. They're very agile, they're very perceptive, they're very impatient, and they have a spending power to match their whims, and they also know what they don't want. So I think in many ways, if we as a market don't adapt to this sort of a consumer base, I don't think that we can survive. And for that, there has to be a 360-degree turn. So I think in that sense, it has changed. It's slowly changing towards consumer whims, but I think it'll take some amount of time to really match that and whet their appetite.
That's very interesting. And there's something there that I want to come back to, but I will take this to you guys. Nikhil, would you like to start?
Yeah, thank you, Supriya. That was very interesting. When you speak about how the market has really changed in the past 10 years. Now, let me bring you back to 10 years ago. The process of meeting clients still remains the same. Of course, now it's on Zoom. But 10 years ago, I remember the families used to come together. Yeah. They used to go after a trend. 10 years ago, when we started doing gowns, that was the trend that they used to come for. And there was a certain amount of fantasy that they would look for when they came to us. 10 years later, and this is the beautiful part about design, is that now they know exactly what they're coming for. And that may not necessarily be a trend, but the ecosystem that they want to be a part of, a community, a design ethos. And in these 10 years, Shantanu and I have focused deeply on understanding the values we bring to someone's lives. As opposed to 10 years ago, it was mainly a creative idea, interesting embroideries, avant-garde silhouettes. And then after a point, it wasn't ours anymore. It became the client's life. And now they take it forward. So there's been a massive shift. And in design, as they say, every shift is fantastic. Now we create intelligently, far more intelligently. We create within the box, and yet the box has to be creative enough for them to not move into a loop of going somewhere else. But the beautiful part of this really is that there is a community that Shantanu Nikhil has now, which didn't happen 10 years ago.
Yeah, if I may add, adding to what Nikhil just said and where Supriya just left, I feel there is a very strong duality to India. India has two connotations, and very early on in our brand journey, which is say 2001, we understood that there is this traditional India that is sitting in front of us, and of course there is this wave of contemporary India that we can be a part of. Which India do we belong to? And I feel that just the fearlessness of choosing contemporary India and kind of using the tradition and the heritage of India and giving it a bit of spunk and edginess is what prompted us to launch Shantanu and Nikhil. So when you look at how fashion has changed its landscape in the last 20 years, I feel that this country has evolved and has given us an opportunity to also be fearless in the way we wanted to look at India as a holistic country trying to understand and perceive fashion. So while we stayed away from the traditional silhouettes very early on, we did try to give it an edge through reinterpretation of certain traditional silhouettes, whether it was the sari gown that we launched in 2013 or doing away with lehengas and sort of doing gowns as a way of creating a category that could be worn at a reception or a cocktail party, I think. And then, of course, the game changer for us was just bringing about a bit of femininity and drape and asymmetry to menswear, which was otherwise looking so boring, where people used to look at wearing their tuxedos or their black tie jackets to be a part of their own wedding functions and ceremonies. So I feel India is far more receptive to innovation than we ever thought. So the idea is of breaking stereotypical notions of what India stood for in terms of colors is something that we defied. So we still do decadent colors. And if decadence is something that was accepted even in ceremonies and occasions, so I feel this is a great opportunity and a great country where one can play with this duality. It's just that which part of that India do you belong to? So it's been a joyful ride, so to say, so far. And the second innings, of course, is a lot more, I would say, adventurous, because we've just launched our bridge to luxury brand, which again has certain aesthetics of what we do in couture, but it of course has a bit of inclusion and a bit of new luxury feel to it.
I'll come back to that. And there's a ton to unpack in what all of you guys have said. But I'm going to, for those people who may not be familiar with, your journeys, at least particularly in the last 1 year, I just want to, and I'll go back to you, Supriya, and then come back to you guys to talk about the Bridge to Luxury brand. All of you have sort of, in 2020, when most people are kind of hunkering down, all of you have in a sense taken sort of big leaps in your professional career, or embarked upon changes, so to speak. I'll start with you, Supriya. You've moved out of what one might call your comfort zone, which has been the editorial space in fashion, after years and years of being right on top of your game there. What made you want to take up the challenge of heading up Reliance AJIO Luxe? And perhaps for those who might not be familiar, could you just tell our audience a little bit about what AJIO Luxe is?
Yeah, I think 2020 has been a year for everyone to look inward, and I think I've reached that stage where, like you said, it was comfort zone. I mean, I've been doing this for so long that I think I needed that time to also unlearn and pivot to something new. And when I actually started talking to Darshan just to figure how this journey was going to unfold, I thought, why not? There's a great deal of unlearning. And I did my time with print. I love print. It is my heart and soul and bread and butter for so many years. But I think I'd reached that time that even as a magazine with Elle, I think we were the first ones to do a whole lot of digital initiatives, even whether it's partnering with Instagram, doing cool things. But I think you reach a point where I think you've been there, done that, and been there, done that again. It was time for new learnings more than anything else. And as an editor, we always had to juggle how to please advertisers and also have content that would appeal to someone like you or my mom or anyone. But at some point, then when the idea of AJIO Luxe came about, I think the great incentive for me was that here's a luxury e-commerce portal, but we have an editorial approach to the whole thing. The narrative, the storytelling, it's not just pure commerce and price-based catalog approach. It is purely it's content, but with a touch of commerce. So as a reader, we're taking you through a journey, and eventually if that journey leads you for a sale, for a bag or a shoe, that's great. But I think it's a amalgamation of all the years of what I've learned. You know, you bring in a certain journalistic ethos to the whole storytelling. You're selling a beautiful bag, all of that, and the nice thing is we also have a digital magazine. So I think it fuels both my passion and of having someone come and read and have someone buy at the end of it. And I think it was quite interesting. So I think in many ways it was a whole lot of unlearning and so much fear on trying to figure whether you can ultimately tap into a consumer who's interested in the story, or you know, is he or she interested in buying. So I think if I didn't do this now, I don't think I'd never do it. And I'm very grateful that we're doing this at a time when there is infinite possibilities in the digital landscape.
Yeah, and I definitely want to talk about that, because obviously this is really the best time. This is the, you know, people are just going wild with what the metaverse is offering in terms of retail. But before that, Shantanu, you just mentioned your Bridge to Luxury brand. Now, you guys, in your introduction, Vivek mentioned that you guys were obviously in the news. The brand was in the news for picking up, you know, big time investment. And if I'm not mistaken, perhaps the first thing you did post the investment was launch this sort of Bridge to Luxury line. So two questions there. One is for, again, for audiences who may not be aware of the line, could you give them a sense of what this really is? Because, you know, I've spoken to a lot of people about SNN and they seem to think that it's sort of Shantanu Nikhil light, which it isn't, because there's obviously no compromise in terms of detailing and in terms of what you bring to your silhouettes and cuts and, you know, what you're really known for. So it's all in there. And yet it is that sort of Bridge to Luxury brand. So just a little bit about what SNN is and what kind of risks were you taking on when you decided to launch this line, and what made you do it?
Sure. Very pertinent question, Pragya. And, you know, launching a brand right from the time you got invested into is not an easy task. In fact, this particular brand called SNN was being incubated under the umbrella of the mother brand for some time now. You know, it all started in 2016 when we kind of disrupted, you know, our emotions of how we perceive design to be. And it so happened that we were pretty robust and very bullish about how menswear as a market can turn its head around. You know, the designers were only looking at women's wear as their go-to approach, but we felt that Indian menswear with a contemporary twist was a big miss. And we just sort of thought that how can we bring about a sartorial change or a difference through a strong narrative or storytelling that can sort of take the nostalgia of India and just add a bit of spunk and that whole millennial vibe to it. So just to make that, you know, age-old Nehru collar look a little bit more sexier. So the attendees could look at wearing a Nehru collar, but in their own choice of how they want to dress up. And I think that's how this movement started in 2016, where we started doing storytelling on the ramp, where the stories, each and every runway look had a story that pretty much befitted the overall theme of the collection. So these sartorial choices and the silhouettes with where asymmetry, minimalism, and details sort of came into being. And it was this brand that we felt, and it was this particular line which we felt had a very strong carve-out approach, where we could just give it its namkaran and identity. It was already being nurtured there, and SNN is nothing but a reincarnation of what Shantanu Nikhil Couture was in 2015, but it has a lot more functionality to it, but a very strong design ethos still.
Okay, so Shantanu just gave you a heads up on the logical part of it, and of course the business, and that confuses me sometimes as well. But when it comes to design, I think really, what does this brand stand for people? So in very simple terms, when we're discussing this with our design team as well, when people go out in the evenings, and at least when they used to go out in the evenings, what is it that they used to carry or wear that spoke about their existence? Now, usually men buy watches, belts, you know, pocket squares. But the true identity of India in its contemporary form is what we were focusing on. And this is not just a kurta. It would be also coming in from our ethos of doing asymmetrical kurtas, but absolutely clean, no embroidery, small details of leather that made it contemporary, buttons which were specifically created from an era of India and yet made contemporary. So in an outfit like a kurta or a shirt, there would be just three elements that define the brand. We wanted people to come into that ecosystem of the brand, which they can feel like they missed. They could feel like they felt maybe stronger, maybe sexier, somewhat astute, with what Indian clothes actually do. But if they are not fitted well, they can throw you off and make you feel a certain way. Our identity that we created in this journey was with a certain color palettes like military green, navy blues, deep chocolates, slate blacks, slate coal. And we wanted to continue that structure that, how uniforms are based on, whether it is military or navy. There is a certain amount of structure to it. And we felt in India, with such abundant textile and techniques, we really forgot the sartorial values of India. So we went back into time and we started to, find our identity in that. And now the brand S&N really describes Indian sartorial in its contemporary form.
Yeah,
if that helps.
Yeah, and it is positioned when you look at the product segmentation, it is truly celebration wear for us. And it gives us a very strong hybrid architecture of playing with Indian and sort of Indo-Western and ethnic influences while remaining contemporary at heart. So it's not ethnic wear, it is not high street, it is celebration wear, which is seamless. So, and it could not necessarily just be restricted to weddings. It could be your first date, it could be your TED talk, it could be your 20th anniversary. So it has
20th? No, we'll start with 2. Second might be better, Shantanu.
Foresight.
Yeah, no, but and it's also very Shantanu and Nikhil. I will come back to the design ethos again if we have time, but I wanted to also, and all of this is kind of leading up to what I would hope will be my final question, which is about how, about digital disruption. But, Supriya, you have taken this role on at a time when there seems to be this sort of growth spurt when it comes to online fashion luxury portals, right? Like Nike is venturing into it, and Myntra, of course, is venturing into it. Tata Click Luxury has been around, but they've kind of revamped their game in many ways. What do you think is prompting this growth spurt? And what does that for you when you take over a role like this? Is that there are some parts of it, I'm sure that there are pros to having an ecosystem up alongside you, but also perhaps it makes your task in order to create a niche for AJIO Luxe a little bit more challenging. So I just want to get a sense of what you have in mind in terms of creating that niche, what you make of this growth spurt, and what role do you feel curation and if at all price points, the price points at which you select the products that you will be retailing will have a role to play in creating that niche? Sorry, it's a large question, but I'm sure you can handle it.
I'll try. I'll do this thing. I think in many ways, I think all of us are here because we're all driven by, two main defining factors. There's immense spending power and the fact that we have consumers who are sure of what they want and most importantly, sure of what they don't want. So I think in many ways, this is an ecosystem where we all have to coexist. I can speak for AJIO Luxe in terms of why we do what we do is the kind of brands that we house, given Reliance Brands' entire portfolio of brands. We have Bottega Veneta, we have Xenia. We are also launching Kalgaya, Zimmermann. I think a lot of really interesting brands that I think would be aspirational and inspirational in the global front. And I think no one really has a closet that has, okay, this is my rack of Indian brands, this is my rack of international brands. The idea is to, wear everything all together, all at once when we're all able to go out. And I think we also have a great selection of homegrown brands. We also have Shantanu and Nikhil. SNN by Shantanu Nikhil as well. So I think, and along with other up-and-coming brands, whether it's Ituana, whether it's Mali, all of them. And I think the idea is that we have all of them here, but the idea is not to have a catalog-based approach. We are telling stories, whether it is designers, whether it is people wearing those clothes. So the idea is to connect with the consumer in a slightly more interesting manner than just a catalog. So I think that in that sense, curation is important because it has to entice someone like you. It also has to entice someone like Shantanu and Nikhil to want to stock their clothes over here. So I think it's a fine line. And the only thing that I would like to say that separates us possibly is that we are in a position where we collaborate with cultural zeitgeist, with photographers, talents, writers, all of that, to create one entire universe where you have, okay, you can flip a book, you can shop at the same time and move on with it, happy for that little bubble, that joy that you're getting at that point of time. So I think in that sense, curation doesn't just restrict itself to the brands we stock. It is also the curation of the kind of stories that we are telling when we have you there for that few minutes.
It's, it's so interesting what Supriya just said. It almost seems like, when she would edit a copy for a month and then wait for a result over the next 3 months. It's short now. It's short.
It's shorter.
Instantly, which makes it a great platform, because I seldom see a website where someone's telling me a story. And, India is a country of storytelling. Since kids, we've heard such incredible stories. So now finally we have storytellers telling stories for brands. And I think that's a huge plus.
I think it's fun, right? I mean, you're reading a story and if you like what they're wearing, you can shop, you're done. I mean, I think for me, that's just quick. I'm not wasting my time. I'm not doing anything else. I'm reading, I'm getting knowledge, I'm shopping, I'm moving on. So I think in many ways, it has to be a cohesive universe that comes alive in some form, at least when you're sitting at home and clicking away.
Yeah,
I don't know, Pragya, does it answer your question?
It does. And it's also, I mean, I'm really glad that someone's, that you guys are thinking in this manner, because, we are, because it's, we also have to think about what storytelling means in this country, right?
Exactly.
We have Gucci selling out of, video games or whatever, those kinds of things happening across. We have now virtual fashion entirely, where you can buy things just
everything is the phone, right? It's just like what you have over here. You're just swiping. I mean, kids don't know how to hold pencils. They know how to swipe, and it's as simple as that. I mean, I go anytime, you can see I can see carts being filled up because they're just using the phone. And I think you've got to hold them over here. You need to fit your frame here. You need to, fit your garment here. And I think that is the future, right? I mean, sadly, but yes, it is the future.
I don't know exactly, but we can debate that another time. Exactly. But I just wanted to come back to, I remember, it's interesting that Shantanu, you were talking about, your ideas about menswear that kind of date back to the DNA of the brand that you guys built, perhaps decades ago. But also there's a recent report by, I think, Vogue Business that talks about how, particularly in the segment of clothes that you guys kind of are known for, menswear has overtaken and is selling more than women's wear, and is a larger share, accounts for a larger share of the luxury fashion market. And if I remember correctly, Nikhil, once I think we were talking in 2019, and SNN for you at that point in time, you were thinking of this rich luxury brand being exclusively menswear, and then you guys did decide to launch with men's and women's wear. So I'm just curious about that choice and what made you decide to do it, and how has it played out in hindsight?
I'll quickly tell you why, and then Shantanu will step in with his numbers. The reason why, first we decided to start with menswear and then eventually have 30% of the space of the store to be given to women's wear, was mainly because there was in the anti-trend philosophy that we belong to, there was a very slight, a gentle difference between a him and a her. Our menswear almost were bordering on the lines of being women's wear. And we felt it would be unfair for our women client to enjoy the fluidity that men do, and also vice versa. So we've given our women's wear enough structure coming from men, and also we've taken a lot of the drapes from men and put them into women's wear. So when you actually walk into the store, you may not even feel there's a difference between men and women. And that is really the future. If you look at shopping in India, or even how we feel emotionally, the gap is closing much faster than one can imagine. We are now many genders, and we want to be a complete gender fluid store. So S&N in the future will actually, there will be no men's and women's, it will be one. And I think this is just the beginning of that. And that therefore the inclusion in that sense.
So very rightly put, because S&N, even under the umbrella of Shantanu Nikhil, was blurring these gender lines. And we know that we were creating a lot of fluidity in our menswear, and then our women's wear clients used to ask us that, why can't you give us some masculinity? And then that whole overlapping of a man and a woman energy kind of pretty much gave us the belief that S&N is the brand that can do it. And of course, we've been doing it with Shantanu Nikhil as well. But even when you, like Nikhil said, you walk into a space today, it's hard to differentiate between both men and women. And that's the reason why we chose women's wear also to come in, because it could set the foundation for our anti-trend path, which very clearly is S&N.
I just want to talk a little bit about something that you guys brought up right at the beginning. Supriya, I'll start with you. In the beginning, Shantanu was talking about this sort of two Indias thing, right? And of course, that depends on your perspective. One could even argue that there are many, many different Indias, even just when we're talking about retail and fashion and luxury, right? When you are at the start of a project, like you are pretty much at the start of a project, you also have the opportunity to define and kind of think through where your consumers are going to be coming from. And of course, the great thing about being online is that you can be everywhere at once. So that's both scary and exciting. How would you, is it wiser to keep your TG sort of tightly defined, or would it be wiser perhaps to go as broad as possible? And is there a danger in falling between stools, etc.? I'm just wondering how you're thinking through this process.
I think it's a lot of blue sky thinking. And I don't think that we're saying, okay, this is my audience, this is not my audience. We've launched the app, AJIO Luxe. You have to download AJIO and then you find AJIO Luxe there. And people can still buy. And we launched this in January. And what was interesting is that the top 10 million relevant customers in India are spread across 40 cities. And hence, I think 60% of our orders came from outside the top 8 cities. Now, I don't know what that says, but it shows that we're not restricting our audiences. I think there are two types of luxury consumers, like in anything. Someone who may know what to buy, goes in their shops and moves on. And I think there is an entry level who are picky, they keep choosing, they come back, they keep adding it to wish list and all of those things. So we analyze all of that, right? Like, why is this on a wish list for 3 months? And then eventually, are they buying that? Is something else that's same, but different, or is it the final thing? So I think it's an interesting audience. At least I'm learning in terms of consumers. I feel that I don't think we need to restrict ourselves, especially when we're launching something as vast and as consuming as a luxury e-commerce platform. And I think we have to open it up to anyone who wants to get inside that world. And why not? You're trying to be inclusive. So your tone of communication to buy is always, you can sit with us, you can try this. And that's how you're going to draw in customers, whether it's outside the top 8 cities or within the top 8 cities, And that for us was a revelation of sorts, that we can't restrict just because, this is luxury and this is not. You have to have a wider scope, and you have to, India, there are many Indias, and I think you can't just restrict yourself to this city and not that city. You have to open it up. And sure enough, it showed, right?
If I can quickly step in here.
Before you do, Nikhil, actually, I'll just add to the question so then you can take both, because I was going to ask you.
I can't remember so many questions.
Go ahead. Yeah, no one knew that.
I think we have to look at it from two perspectives. One is from numbers, right? So your reach is, you use the sky as a backdrop to reach as many people as possible, and you're very happy that it reaches them and they buy something from Jamshedpur or Chhattisgarh, and your numbers are
Surat,
clicking in the morning.
Bareilly.
Surat, and
Yeah.
that is where I think I can see a massive smile on Supriya's face, and I totally understand. Shantanu resonates with you as well on that. But when it comes to design, I think one has to applaud your team and the people creating this product, that they are able to reach and find that consumer who understands your product. I mean, it's not someone who just has money and doesn't know where to spend it and just presses enter. You must appreciate and respect that that person has gone through your product, has understood what you're trying to say in that 1 by 1 inch frame, and then finally ordered. So what is it really trying to say? It's applauding all the creatives, the creators of this country. And I think that this is a great time. If people can applaud creators, that means the sensibility of this country is aligning itself. Tomorrow you could be in Chhattisgarh or in Surat and sitting at a bar or sitting at an evening spot, and you might just spot someone exactly like you because of the choices they made a few days ago on the internet, thanks to the app that you put out there. So I think India is churning from both a consumer and also from an intent perspective. So this is a great time for creators.
Yeah.
And now
I'll just, I mean, you've answered a part of it, but I was, I was thinking about how you were talking about, the DNA of your brand is so essentially present in SNN, right? You have the sort of gender neutral silhouettes, you have neutral colors, right? Those solid neutral colors. It's very anti-trend. It's very much what you're known for, those kinds of details and accessories with leather, etc. When you create, so one part of this question is to Shantanu and one part of it is to you, Nikhil, is when you create a bridge to luxury brand, you automatically obviously open up a new market segment, right? You're in a sense a wider market segment, because everybody who was buying Shantanu and Nikhil can still buy this. And then there are more people millennials who might be able to afford this, right? So there may be temptation there to kind of maybe also, expand the design repertoire or design ethos or sensibility to kind of cater to more tastes in the market, if you will, right? And how do you walk that line between the commerce part of it and retaining the design ethos? So that is the question I wanted to ask Shantanu. Of course, both of you can take this question as you please. And Nikhil, what I wanted to ask you is the flip side of this, right? In the beginning, you were telling me, or you were telling us rather, that now when people come to your store or people are buying from you, there is a community, there's a Shantanu and Nikhil community that they belong to, right? And now it's become so instinctive for all of us to know what a Shantanu and Nikhil design really is, what it stands for, what its values are, and what it really is instinctively. As a designer, as a creative person, can that sometimes be sort of its own kind of a double-edged sword, where you're like, hey, I know this is what I'm known for, but I just want to make something in, I don't know, neon that doesn't flow in that silhouette that people know me for? So yeah, broad question again.
Before Shantanu answers, I'll quickly tell you the answer for this one, because I'll forget the question by the time Shantanu is done. It has happened many times. It's only natural for a creator to question and also to be a rebel. I've always been a rebel. I've done that as well. But luckily, Shantanu said, be a rebel, enjoy that moment, but don't go beyond 25%. And so that we don't lose commerce because of your rebellion. And we tried it in 2017 with one collection, it was called Rajkumari, where the color palettes vacillated between bright orange, yellow, Rani pink, and we've never done those colors. And I will never forget that year, because that year we did not do very well in our supply chain. We didn't do very well with our orders because the color palettes were so different. And I think Shantanu put his head down and said, I told you 25%, and I didn't listen to him. So I've learned my lesson.
You know what? He's just being modest. He has a very, Nikhil, as much as he is a part of this beautiful design ecosystem, and I feel that he is the maverick when it comes to elasticity in design. He does understand, and he has that pulse for the market. You know, it comes naturally to him. So I don't have to really guide him so much to say, but there's a clear understanding between art and commerce as a brand, and as a philosophy and as a mandate, or even if you look at it as an SOP, it's very clearly stated that art will always succeed commerce. So if there is no art, business cannot happen. So he's always had that flexibility. As a brand, we've had that flexibility. And when it comes to brand extensions and scaling up and investments coming into the business, there is one thing very clear, that when you understand and you look at the competition matrix, the bottom of the pyramid pretty much dominates 50% of the market, followed by mid-premium, which is sitting at 24%, then premium at about 9%, and then you have bridge to luxury that is sitting at 5.5%, and then on the tip of it, where we are as designers and as couturiers, always sort of trying to grab an opportunity to be a part of that market, which is only sitting at 1.5%. This just goes to show that that there is a very big belly in the center, and it also gives the Indian diaspora and the urban Indians a great chance to climb that value chain. And we are looking at a bridge to luxury segment, which is only 5.5%. So of course, that just goes to show that there is not enough competition there. There is not enough storytelling and innovation and design-centric brands that talk a certain language, a certain narrative, belong to a certain landscape. I think it's very clear in our heads that I think bottom of the pyramid is something that we'll never be able to address. We will continue to dabble with this bridge to luxury concept of extending our brands and reaching out wider. So today it is S&N, and after a certain scale where we feel that beyond this scale, we need to sort of move away and have another brand come in. That's how the situation will be, which means that at any point in time, there will never be a compromise on design. We'll still be very inclusive with what we want to do and how we want to play it. So there will never be, hopefully, should never be an intervention of sorts when it comes to design and the design team's inclusion with how and where the brand is heading.
Okay, my final question, and then we maybe take a couple of questions from the audience. And this is again for all of you, but I'll start with you, Supriya. You've already addressed some of it, along the way while talking about what you've been working on. But, the pivoting to e-commerce, right, for the luxury fashion segment has perhaps been expedited by, it was always in the offing, it was imminent, but by the pandemic, right, in 2020, at least globally it has, right? So that's one thing that's happened. And on the other hand, we are also living in a world where, what is called the metaverse is completely changing how retail on the whole works, right? I mean, there's just so much happening in terms of experimentation, innovation with tech and digital, the digital universe, right? So I just want to kind of, one thing that obviously came up is that today, you can sell via your app, you can sell to any part of India, right? In parts of India where people wouldn't have thought of opening a store, or where the cost of opening a store doesn't make sense, but your sales can go in there. And of course, then you can try sort of hybrid ways of storytelling that you are kind of working on, where you can read and you can, experience something and buy something all together. Those are two examples that you gave us. Can you talk to us a little bit more about what are the kind of possibilities that selling luxury online is opening up? And is there any resistance to it when it comes to the Indian market that you've encountered?
I don't think there is any sort of resistance. I think it's more convenience. And I think even, and I'll talk about a small example, that I think when everything shut down last March, everyone, at least I know all the stores, the luxury stores, was selling via distance selling or WhatsApp. or video calls, trying out, sending people here, there, whatever. But eventually, it was a matter of convenience. So I think that a lot, and luxury is, I think, it's not a necessary buy, but it's, something that you indulge yourself in. So, and in many ways, you're looking at conveniences. So I don't think that, to answer your question, if I am moving in that direction, I feel that it opens up a possibility that, oh my God, I didn't know that I could shop for Bottega on my phone, and it's also, I get that it's one type of an audience, but the fact is, it's a great joy. You're able to do that, and it's so convenient, it's quick, and we're also trying to create a fully immersive world to our consumers, and brands across a truly global platform that's built by Indians for Indians. So I think we are, in a way, speaking their language, our language, cosmopolitan, vernacular. The idea is to communicate to any new and existing consumers. I don't know if I've answered your question, but I think that it's a matter of convenience that, okay, I could do this too, and about time, right? And I don't know who else is doing it, but yes, there are many platforms, but I just look at it in a way that, why not? It's about time. I don't know if I've answered it in...
No, you have. No, you have. Of course, the question is, for you to interpret and answer anyway. And you guys, Shantanu and Nikhil, I know that SNN was supposed to have, if I'm not mistaken, a launch during Fashion Week, and then it ended up being a digital launch. And again, I'm not to speak of, the internet as if it's been invented yesterday, but, the importance of it in our lives has been so greatly exaggerated by this pandemic. I would just want to get a sense of how you're thinking, as both as entrepreneurs in the fashion space as well as designers in the fashion space, is how much of it is sort of centered around how this space is evolving, and what role do you see your physical stores playing in the future? How does their role change in the context of what e-commerce is becoming?
So, Pragya, I would start off by saying that since we address the luxury market, let's look at the landscape of luxury in India and, in fact, the world. So there is a clear shift of luxury versus neo-luxury. So while luxury was at any given point in time about history, heritage, rarity, exclusiveness, high net worth individuals, price points, etc., neo-luxury is just exactly the opposite of that, which is more inclusive. It's got a sense of, high earners, but not rich yet. Millennials almost forming 80% of that ecosystem. You're looking at a great, digital economy, digital marketing. You're looking at collaboration, storytelling. So fortunately for us, we sit on both sides of luxury. So what this is doing for us is that it is clearly giving us our ceremonial couture a great differentiating factor when it comes to bridal wear and couture versus SNN, which is a bridge to luxury format that is in the celebration wear segment. So either or, no matter what the world says, brick and mortar is here to stay, and there will always be that touch and feel, that tactile emotion around the brick and mortar. But what is changing quite dramatically is how omni enabled are we as a brand? Like, do we have the intent to give the same customer experience to the same to a customer who may use many tools to engage with the brand? And I think that's where this whole phygital nature of being not only designers but entrepreneurs is coming to the forefront. I think we have pretty much set our ground rules that as much as we will scale up in a big brick and mortar emotion, we're also going to look at our e-commerce and our strategies, our digital strategies, performance marketing engagement, to also gauge the marketing, to gauge the market, the newer consumer acquisitions, data that can bring the consumers and the brand even closer. I think all of that is going to be the future of retail. But having said that, despite us making and entrepreneurs and brands making all these radical shifts, it is also going to sort of be important for the organized retail in India, at least. I can't talk about what is happening in the world, but I feel that the organized retail, the malls will have to become a lot more immersive with how they are looking at their omni-channels, how are they collaborating with certain logistic partners to bring all the brands under one umbrella, where they're actually also kind of create or selling their products to a digital mall setup. I don't think that is happening as radically as it is happening anywhere else in the world. So for India, while we are trying to disrupt and create our own ecosystem of being digital, I feel that the outside world of retail will also have to look at great storytelling through a digital medium. So it's a mix of both, and that's when I come back to the duality of India, because I think India is a little different from the rest of the world. There is a very strong focus on ceremonies and occasions in this part of the world, like none other. So it will always make your retail presence through brick and mortar that much more relevant. While of course there is a new audience that is also sort of is growing at a very stupendous pace. And I believe that in the last 1 year, almost 20% growth has happened, or new customers, 20% of India's new customers have gotten into this whole ecosystem or into a digital ecosystem, which is obviously giving us great opportunity to suss out certain cities and markets where we would at some point in time would also like to scale up and see where it takes us. So it's a beautiful world to explore, to innovate, and to sort of have that amalgamation of creativity and art come together.
Thank you for that. We have some really great questions from the audience. I think I have time to be able to take at least a couple of them. I'm going to start with a question that goes, I'm reading it as I read it out to you, so bear with me. Do you think that Indian pret fashion has punched below its weight on a global level? And if so, why? Would you guys like to start, and then maybe Supriya, you can respond to this as well?
I didn't get the question. Say the question again, Pragya, I'm sorry.
Do you think that Indian pret fashion has punched below its weight on a global level? And if so, why?
I don't think so. We still have a lot of, home nurtured brands still struggling to understand what the pret market is. You've had the likes of Zara's and Gaps and, all these bitch to luxury formats like Mosima Dutis. They've started invading the Indian market, so which also makes a lot of sense for some of the homegrown brands. And now with corporatization of fashion happening, almost certainly giving an organic way of looking at growing these brands and scaling them up. So the storytelling of India's pret ecosystem is just about starting to develop. And it'll only be a matter of time before we see homegrown Indian brands making a mark. I wouldn't say globally, but at least nationally, we should be the leaders of our belief and intent.
Right, and just quickly, I'll throw this in. India, is a unified country, but when it comes to art and craft, it is still very diverse. I mean, Rajasthan is completely different from Gujarat. Kerala is completely different from Ladakh. And I think that unification is starting to happen because, in a sense, because of COVID, a lot of the individual young creators from smaller parts in various parts of India have just sprouted. They've made their presence felt. What we now need is continuation in their belief pattern and have the industry look at them, get invested into or collaborate with them to increase their bandwidth. Once that starts happening, I think India will then eventually get there. But I don't think India needs as much as a global exposure, as much as it does need a local exposure, which is, I think, would be greatly appreciated in the next 20 years.
That's a great
I think I don't think we need global validation. It's exactly like what Nikhil said. I think you need local exposure, and you need to have that ability to scale up, whether it's building your own team, whether it's getting corporate investments. But I don't think we need to look for validation from an international point of view. I mean, you can be world famous in India, and if that helps your brand, so be it. And I think, I mean, you have to look at it in that way. I mean, you have to take baby steps to get to somewhere. So I completely agree with it. Yeah.
Guys, are you okay? I'm aware that we are running close to the 1 hour mark. Are you guys okay if we take 1 or 2 more audience questions? Is that okay?
Yeah.
All of you? Okay, great. So the next question is, the Indian fashion industry was considered to be behind in the e-commerce trend. Luxury brands worldwide, like Gucci, have been quoted saying they are watching the NFT space. Is the NFT market something that is on the horizon for Indian fashion brands? Would you guys want to go first? And then
first explain what is NFT.
It's a non-fungible token, and it's already come to the Indian art market. Basically, you can buy digital fashion or digital art, so you can essentially make a coat which just exists digitally, and I can own it. Yeah, and I can own it, even though everybody can, Supriya can download it, but only I can claim to own it if I buy it online.
That's crazy, Pragya. Indians are not that crazy.
Time to sell your sketches, Nikhil.
Wow.
I mean, it's come to Indian art market, and it's getting big in Indian art market. In fact, Raghava KK was talking about it at 6 p.m. today.
Maybe we talk about this after the interview, and then we figure out how we can make this into $1 billion.
Definitely. Supriya, any thoughts on that?
No,
I mean, I would expand this a little bit and say, okay, maybe NFTs, it's a bit soon, but
too soon. Yeah.
Sticking with
you
Gucci.
You barely get electricity on a sunny afternoon in Delhi. I mean, what are you talking about NFT? We're Indian. If I buy something digitally, I want it. Like, I want to see it. I want to feel it. I want to sleep with it, But here you can barely get water on time.
That's true. That's a bit. Okay, I know where you live. No, so for example, you were talking about millennials, but Gen Z is now being able to afford where they couldn't buy a pair of Gucci sneakers, but for $100 you can get one which you can just wear, your avatar can wear online, and that's that's becoming their initiation point. Supriya, is this big bad world scaring you in terms of,
Not at all. I mean, I don't have avatars here. It's just me. I like to wear my clothes and my shoes when I go.
Have an avatar.
I like to hold them. I like to see them hanging in my closet. I don't think, I think it's just too soon to discuss NFT.
It sounds like a really bad Saturday night. Like, you wake up in the morning and you just made an investment in something that doesn't exist. I mean,
I think
darling, I'm going to be talking to you guys in 1 year, and all of you will have virtual bodega.
You're wearing virtual SNN, NFT SNN by
Okay, moving on.
It's for me to know in my heart. No.
When brands experiment with new collections and design, isn't the success of that dependent on being able to reach a new audience as well? For a luxury brand, where the positioning is more rigid than new brands, is this where the challenge lies? I'm not sure I understand this question, but I'll let you guys take it as you please.
Okay, so for us, when we started this and we were supposed to launch it on the 10th of March, I remember, and 22nd is when we went to lockdown, we were presuming and assuming that from the time when we open the first store, we will have a transition between our existing customer who knows the brand, will first come to our store and pick up things because it's in a different textile, different technique, but similar silhouettes. But that didn't happen even after we opened our first store in September. We acquired new customers. So it's been an absolutely incredible journey for us. Even, when I take names like Jamshedpur or Chhattisgarh, that's where we're acquiring a new consumer base. And I don't know if I understood your question, but this is one of the realities we're facing right now.
I think to what I understand of the question is that it's always been a challenge for couturiers to wear a second skin almost, So either we are bridal dressmakers or we cater to a certain segment, which I said is very niche, it's 1.5%, it's the tip of the pyramid. Or then you have the elasticity and the bandwidth to do something which pretty much has a trickle-down effect from what your luxury or couture offering is. I think that's one of the reasons why many of the Indian designers have not been able to foray into the ready-to-wear market because we are so ironclad in our own couture ecosystem of marriages and weddings being such a huge segment market for many of us that we forget that there could be this, another brain sitting on the right hand, it could be the right side of the brain, which could actually venture into something that is more accessible. I think we've been a bit fortunate in the way we've looked at our design elasticity. We have been avid sport enthusiasts, so there's a bit of sportiness, ruggedness that sort of comes into the very early starting years of our business. We felt that, or of our brand business journey, we felt that we could incorporate sportiness to our couture garments. And I think for us, having done an athleisure line as early as 2010 with Adidas also gave us an opportunity to understand that there is more to just couture. And for us, we were able to venture and sort of carve our couture aesthetics into a bridge to luxury brand where the ethos remains pretty much the same, but it's just become a lot more diverse in its reach. So it is a challenge for many of us, but I think someone is going to break the barrier. And with corporatization now happening, I'm sure scale should also bring about a certain aesthetic, which without being overpowering by the investing partner, should stand the design community in good stead in the future.
I'm glad you brought that up, because there was something that was missing in my questionnaire so far, and I was feeling like I should have asked you guys about what corporatization brings on board. Final question, guys. E-commerce is getting international competitors who are ahead of the curve in tech. The Editorialist is launching a virtual personal shopping experience with a VR, AR method of trying on items, and they host the brands you can try on their e-commerce site. Is this possible for independent brands to do on a smaller scale, or will they have to be hosted on a third-party platform, perhaps an international provider? How do you feel about this? I will perhaps expand the question, because where the tech part of it is concerned, I guess scale again will, in time, of course, small brands will be able to adopt any technology, because it will, tech by its very definition starts to get cheaper and cheaper as it becomes more popular. But I will expand the question to, I'll start with you, Supriya, in terms of, again, because you are launching, or you have just launched and you're developing an e-commerce site, you automatically, again, become, your competition doesn't remain within the country, right? I mean, it can be a global platform. So, one doesn't have to just talk about a Tata Click or a Nykaa, one can be talking about the Editorialist or what have you. So how are you thinking about what you are developing in the global scheme of things?
I think baby steps. I think, and I think in many ways it is, the Editorialist exists. There's something called the Yes, there's Matches, there's Porter, there's Farfetch. I think we're in a vantage position where we can see what everyone's doing and figure out what works, because my audience is India. My app is applicable to people in India at this point of time. So I think in many ways, like I said, we're trying to create an immersive platform, whether it's using VR, whether it's using technology in its most effective capacity, but never forgetting that my roots are here. So even if I'm buying global brands, I'm also ensuring that that is what appeals to a consumer, a new consumer, whether it's in small towns or big cities. It has to have some sort of a uniform approach. So I think we're observing in many ways what has been done in the past and how you can adapt that winning stick, to our market, because I can't forget who my audience is. So I don't know if that answers, but I think in many ways I have to be very conscious and cognizant of the fact that we are living in India and catering to Indians. So it has to be the best representation of global brands that will appeal to them. And Indian homegrown brands, sorry, yeah.
Guys, final words, this question or anything else that you'd like to add? I mean, where this question is concerned, I think I would like to extend it by asking you guys, you were saying, Nikhil, that now you're interfacing with your customers on Zoom or on, I'm wondering if you guys are thinking of making, even when the world, if and when the world does open up, is that something that you'd like to keep doing? I mean, think of tools that make interactions online viable.
It's a great question. There are two things. One, the first thing that I love to do is go back to doing a show in real time. I'm bloody done with digital shows. I do not like them. They don't propel any creativity. So that's the first thing. What I'd love to do is to continue investing a certain amount of time of the week with my clients from all over the world. It is such a phenomenal platform where we're discussing design, and it's not in a way that they would spend time with you unconsciously. They are spending time with you deeply, understanding the product they want to buy. So the questions are far more precise. The color palettes that they want to discuss are coming from a space where they know what they want. And if they don't know what they want, they are very clear of understanding of how far they can go. So it's made the process so precise. It's really like a therapist and a client kind of situation, which I'm enjoying a lot. And I'm meeting people from different parts of the world. Families are coming together and discussing what they want. So I think it's really, really intimate. Building a whole new relationship bank on Zoom and on Microsoft Teams. I'm loving that.
I would like to end by saying that I think what this pandemic has taught us, and subconsciously we always knew that, but the pandemic has reinforced it and reinstated and validated it to an extent that we have to look within. And that when we say look within, what are we doing to really cater to this magnificent bouquet of demographics that sit in front of us? You're looking at close to 450 million people under the age of 36, 37, each one of them, and they are urban Indians we're talking about, which is not even the population of, which is almost the population of the United States of America. So if we can address the growing needs of this ever-evolving diaspora of urban Indians through a bit of disruption and giving them something which is locally flavored but has a global appeal to it, I feel there is nothing more encouraging, more purposeful than that. So I feel that this whole concept of globalizing fashion and when will Indian fashion ever reach scales when it comes to global is a stereotype. I feel we need to get out of that, and we need to look at who we are intrinsically and what is it. Why do you Indians have to even go travel abroad when there could be brands sitting here serving and servicing your needs through a very strong India proud narrative? And I feel we are heading towards that, and we really don't feel the need of being globalized too early, too soon. And that's a very evolved market, a very mature market. You could either be here or there. So let's respect our art and give that art back to the community that deserves that art.
Very well said. More power to you. More power to all three of you guys. And if I may, I am proud of what all of you are doing to shape the future. Thank you for speaking with me. And thank you to the audience who we can't see, but thank you for bearing with us. And thank you for your lovely questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Pragya. Thank you, Shantanu Nikhil.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Vivek.
Yeah.
Thank you.